So full disclosure on this interview, I was so excited to talk to Jonathon. I got to meet him at Worlds last year in New York City. We've done one other interview prior to this as well. He's a really great guy, and obviously 100 Thieves had just beat CLG, so I was looking forward to talking some smack. I forgot to swap the video from interview room 1 to interview room 2, so unfortunately it is just going to be a picture of the two of us, but this might be one of my favorite interviews I've done in a while, so hope you all enjoy.
Hello, hello.
Jonathon, how are you doing? You know damn well how I'm doing. Look, I try and hide my bias during as many of these interviews as I possibly can, but given that I know you on probably a more personal level than I know anybody else that I would talk to here, obviously I'm feeling decent. So how are things on your end? I know bittersweet ending to the day, but you still locked upper bracket, which coming into the day there was the chance of everybody missing playoffs. So how does it feel when the dust will settle?
Yeah, I mean, all things said and done, right? Like, we went into the day with anywhere from 3rd to 7th being possible outcomes for us. So I think for me at least, like, you know, top down perspective, I can see like the bigger picture of like, you know, there's 3 games that went into this week and then 1 tiebreaker at the end of it all. So like the first 3 games were amazing, super great, exciting, and all, you know, a super big kind of way for us to make the season a lot better than people were thinking it was going to be at the end. And then at the very last second, obviously we get that loss, which, you know, it stings a little bit, but, you know, we're still locked upper bracket. I think both, you know, C9 and FlyQuest have shown they can take games off each other, and we've shown we can take games off C9 more easily than we can off Fly. So
Yeah.
I think, you know, all things considered, it's not a bad matchup for us. So like, I think we would have taken it either way. You know, it's a nice little feather in the hat to say we finished 3rd, which obviously we didn't get to do today. But matchup wise, I think we're still in a good spot, still in a position to where like the first match is going to be really exciting for us. Something we, you know, we actually had that storied best of 5 last summer against C9, which had a very similar roster as well. So like, we know gods can bleed. We know we're the ones that have made them bleed. So, you know, it's going to be a fun matchup for sure.
That was the next thing I was gonna say. It's not like this is foreign territory to you guys. You guys lost a very, very close best of 5 to this exact same roster, barring M&S, with the same exact players. So it's very much a repetition of what was a really good series last time. How do you go it? Like, what do you do differently this time? Or I guess the better question is, what is one lesson that you guys learned from that series last time that you think is going to be applicable this upcoming weekend?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is just we've gone through the pressure and the gauntlet of playing a playoff series, right? For a lot of our players, that was their first time playing a playoff series where, you know, we were in the driver's seat, things can go well for us, and some people just outright a first time, you know, LCS playoff, right? So for us, we've gotten that experience. We've gone through the motions a few times. We went through the loser bracket, had a win, had another close best of 5 loss. So like, for us, I think we've gone through that process. We know what to expect. We've got kind of like some experience and some kind of like time spent in that environment. So it's not going to feel as foreign this time around. So I think for us, we can then go to the next step of focusing on what do we need to actually do in the game from a strategy perspective, as opposed to like doing the kind of preamble of like, what do we need to do to mentally prepare for this? What do we need to do like on the day to prepare? Because I think the flow of the day is so different, and I think that's something a lot of folks don't realize. When we come to the studio for a normal best of 1, you know, we come in, we kind of sit in our room for a little bit, we do makeup, we play our game, we do press, and then we just go home. But a best of 5, like that can, like, especially for all of our games, we went to 5 very regularly. So, you know, we have to bring snacks. We're kind of rationing out the snacks throughout the day, making sure everyone's eating a little bit between games, so no one's going too hungry and kind of getting low energy throughout the day. Your turnaround time between games is very quick, where you kind of go straight to the bathroom if you need to, fuel up a little bit, talk some strategy, you hear your side select, you go right into the next game, and it's like, you know, it's very quick, go. Yeah. So I think that like experience is like, I think a very big night and day for a lot of the players. So now that we've got that under our belt, that's, you know, that whole thing shouldn't be too foreign, and we should be in a good spot to actually like kind of just focus more so on the gameplay element of everything.
Today, though, was the opposite of quick for you guys.
Yeah.
You had what I like to call, for those watching the video that don't know the context of this, Optic is the most historic Call of Duty team of all time. When they would play in the early days of Call of Duty, they would get the first matchup of every day and the last in a way to guarantee viewership. You guys got today what we call the Optic effect, where you play the first game and the last game and you just have this cold, dead period in between. What'd you guys do during that time? Because you'll hear rumors during Worlds of teams like finding like impromptu scrims to try and help fill the time. what were you guys doing during what was 7 hours of break?
Yeah, so for us, we kind of worked with Riot to see like what can we do to make sure we best utilize this time, because obviously sitting in the team rooms the whole time backstage is not a great use of time. It's not where teams want to be, not where players want to be. Like the players want to go somewhere a little more comfortable. They want to, you know, eat, hang out, do some stuff between the two games. So we needed to be back, I think, around when the 5th game of the day started. So for us, we kind of went back to our facility. We all grabbed some food, got kind of like fueled back up to, you know, knowing it's going to be a long day. We watched a lot of the games together of the other teams that were playing, because almost every single game had some form of butterfly effect into our playoff scenarios. So, you know, the first game after us was, you know, the Fly TSM match. So if Fly beats TSM, if we hadn't won, that would have been a really big impact for us. But because we had won the first game, it kind of was the only one that didn't matter. And then we kind of watched the TLEG series being like, okay, well, if EG loses this, we can fight for 3rd all of a sudden. And then, you know, that happened. We're like, okay, this is crazy. EG lost. Now this is really exciting. We watched the next game and we're like, okay, in the unlikely chance that Dig wins this, now we're at a spot where we are the top, potentially the top of a, you know, multi-way tiebreaker, where we're seated at the end of the gauntlet. Like we just get to be top 4 no matter what, without even having played a game.
Yeah.
So we're kind of watching with bated breath. And then the second we start to see, you know, halfway into that Dig game against GG, we actually had to start hitting the road. And so we're like all in cars, like watching together. And as we're pulling up to the studio, the game ends and we're like, wait a minute. And so we kind of went immediately into like action mode, like planning drafts. We know our opponents are narrowed down to 2 teams. Let's think about like all the ways it can work. We have side select for that last game, so we can pick, you know, the second we see the game and we know what we want, we can pick our side, we can know exactly what we're doing and kind of like just dive right into it. So it went into like kind of a planning phase while everyone's at the studio watching the game. We got the advantage of also watching the teams play right before us, so we get to see like what they ran and kind of see like, is this something we can beat? Is this something we want to play against? How do we want to handle this? And so we kind of just sat in the room planning. We had a good amount of time. And because we kind of spent that kind of more chill time at the office, just recuperating, having a little bit of fun watching the games, kind of like almost as fans, but as a very invested fans to a certain extent, it definitely made it a lot more interesting for the players, while they could still kind of get some of that like kind of unwind, like fully decompress, untense a little bit, knowing that, you know, there is still a battle to come, but they've got a lot of time before it, so they can kind of let their guard down a little bit.
Speaking of the draft, you guys had the advantage of watching Evil Geniuses play 100 Thieves. Doublelift gets banned out, all 3 first-round bans, and then Varus picked against them. Same thing happens in the CLG, or in your guys' game against them as well. 3 bans against Doublelift, first pick Varus, and then double ban on Closer. I'm curious, because I know this is going to be a community question. I'm not sure how in-depth you can go on this, but at what point do you just drop triple banning Doublelift whenever there's other picks available that he's clearly going to go to, and ban something else?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's kind of arguments for both sides, right? Like, obviously, I'm not the one constructing our draft plans. That kind of comes down to our coaches, ThinkCard and Croissant. And obviously, the rest of the staff have their input as well. But, you know, from my perspective, anytime there's a team or player that has, like, either signature picks, like, you know, I think Closer Viego is a good example of, like, a pick that he's known for, very comfortable on. We'll just kind of take it sometimes, even if it's people don't think it's good. Like, he knows how to make it work in those situations where other people aren't confident. And then there's obviously players where they may have a pool of preferred champions. So if you can just take them all out, you kind of know where their 4th champion is. And so if you can predict and kind of add some level of certainty to draft, that can make it easier for teams. So like that's kind of like the reason you still see, like, you know, even if people still win the games, the idea that you can like get to the, you know, 2nd or 3rd picks of the draft, knowing what your opponents will pick, and you can kind of lay the groundwork of what you want to surround that with. That's kind of like the logic of why you might still see that kind of stuff. You know, there's other players in the league where they have their kind of pool of signature picks. Like I know Licorice on GG had a very long period of playing a lot of Renekton, and so some people will just let him take it, right? They'll be like, oh yeah, we know he's gonna take it, and we're totally cool if he takes it. Like he'll do what Renekton does, but we're more comfortable playing into that than maybe, you know, a wild card pick. Like, you know, if he pulls out like a Jax or Fiora or even something wacky like a Singed, right? Like we would rather that world than a world we're not certain about.
So to wrap, we've been going for a bit, so I don't want to take too much of your time, because it's 1:30 here, and it's what, 11:30 for you guys?
Yeah, it's 10:23 for us. I think daylight savings got people desynced.
Wait, it's 4? Oh yeah, I guess it is 4 hours different. What was I gonna ask? Sorry, it is late. I'm blanking at this point.
Yeah, you're good.
We're now officially in playoffs. It's I mean, luckily you guys have the advantage of being able to drop a series if need be. Do you notice a difference in the players in practice over the last 2 or 3 weeks? Because both you guys and 100 Thieves, it just feels like over the last 2 weeks, it's just been a switch flipping. Is that like the playoff buff? And if so, do you think you're going to have an advantage over everybody else going into playoffs, that you got that a little bit early? Or is it like, okay, everybody's in playoffs now, everybody's going to have that level of seriousness and level up just another step?
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of comes down to like the week to week, right? Like if you go into a week being like, hey, if we win this game, here's like the cool playoff implication. It locks us in some way or gives us some kind of security. Going into that week, the players are now going to be like, okay, we have a goal. We win that game. We get the reward we get for the playoff standings. And like that's the thing we're shooting for. So in a lot of those situations, like that is going to make everyone want to double down, be as diligent as they can, be as disciplined as they can in practice, and try and just make the most of the limited days they have going into the matches. Obviously, other teams are in more secure position than others, so I'm sure like C9 and Fly have had days where like they're like, oh, I mean, we're probably fine. Like we can push for first, but like at the end of the day, like we start upper bracket no matter what. Like we're in a pretty safe spot, so like no need to get too worried about it. But at the same time, like there's teams that in the thick of it, what I would call like Mark Z would refer to as the soup.
Oh,
When you're in
God.
the soup and every game matters, like especially those last couple of weeks, like it is really big to just like get everyone to redouble their confidence and make sure they're bringing the most to scrims. And I think that's something that even Palafox mentioned a little bit of, like, the scrims going into this week were the most serious we've taken in quite a while. So like for a lot of the players, that's kind of the sentiment that happens when you get close to that playoffs, where like this, even though every game matters across the 18 you play in the split, when you get to the end and you can kind of see like the limited number of outcomes remaining as they slowly shrink day by day, game by game, it kind of makes it a little more real. And that I think really helps flip that switch for a lot of players.
Interesting. So, last question I have for you before we head out. Season is officially over. Who's your MVP? That's not from CLG.
Ooh, I mean, I think we had a bunch of conversations going on backstage of like, from the players' perspectives, who gets it? Because I think the big conversation is like, okay, most people are always going to go to the top team, and then from that top team, which player stood out the most? So, on FlyQuest, there's like a couple contenders. Some people are saying Spica, some are saying Prince, some are saying Impact. And then for C9, it's kind of like, okay, well, there's Blabber, then there's Berserker, and then like, were they so far above that we like ignore Fudge and stuff like that? Like, there's so many different names to pick. I definitely would say, like, especially seeing the game today on Draven, I think like Berserker's a solid pick for it, given that they won the game and they came out first. I think it's pretty likely we'd see him. I kind of feel like a lot of people set up this really big narrative between the two teams of like, here's these two Korean ADs playing on the top two teams, and they're both kind of like the guys that get played around the most and have like the most pop-off games. Obviously, I think Prince got like the most explosive of the high highs, but he's also had a couple low lows, whereas Berserker's been the more like, he has his pop-offs, but his like level's a little more stable. So it's kind of like, which do you prefer, right? Do you prefer like the consistent cool, or do you prefer like the explosive fire? I think for me, I'm a big consistency guy, so like I would probably go Berserker, but I definitely think it's going to be a really close vote between the two.
So this is actually, well, by the time this interview comes out, it'll be public, but this will be the first split that I've ever voted for MVP, and I've been struggling with that exact same question. Like, Berserker wasn't getting a lot of attention coming into this week, and luckily his pop-off games this weekend have kind of helped, or this week have helped.
Put him back on the radar.
Yeah, but it's like, I just kept looking at it, and it's like, the dude just doesn't, like, yeah, sure, he doesn't have the pop-off moments that Prince does, but dude, he just, you sit there and it's like you can't kill him in a team fight. So what are you gonna do? But anything else you want to get out to the CLG fans? I know one of the unfortunate byproducts of you guys losing is that Numi now has to eat one of the spicy chips.
To be fair, we got close for her. It was a good run. We almost made it.
Almost, but your boys in 100 Thieves, unfortunately for you, fortunately for me, took it home. But in a best case scenario, we get a full best of 5 rematch of this if you guys can beat C9 and we can beat FlyQuest.
That would be dope. Yeah, I mean, I think as far as shout-outs, like, I think just big shout-out to the community for continuing to cheer us on. I know we've had a couple stinky weeks here and a couple explosive weeks there, so I'm glad that everyone's kind of rallied behind us as, like, one of the more fun teams to watch. It's something that I was really excited when we first built the team to bring to the league, of, like, a group that is exciting to cheer for and is going to win games. So I'm glad that we've been able to put up the record that we have the past couple splits, and I think, that goes to a lot of the players and coaches on CLG for putting in the work, putting in the time to make it happen. So, big shout-outs to them as well. And then obviously big shout outs to everyone at CLG that kind of makes all the magic happen behind the scenes, from the social media team, content team, even Greg Kim at the top of the food chain. Like, I think everyone has their part to play in CLG, and I including the fans and especially the fans. So I'm really glad that everyone's been, so supportive of everything, and it's made it kind of feel so easy to just kind of show up and do our thing every week.
I hope you guys get the chance to see all of them in the stadium too. I think that'd be really, really special for you guys. Not at the
Yeah.
cost of 100 Thieves not getting there. I would like for both of us to be
And
there.
we can just both get there. It's fine.
Exactly. Like, just win this weekend and all problems are solved. One of us gets guaranteed and then the other one has to go through the loser's bracket, but that's a problem for a different day.
Fine.
Exactly. That's all I got for you. Go back, get some sleep, relax, celebrate a bit, and get ready for some big games in just 4 or 5 days. So good luck.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Have a go, man.
Dude, take care.